You know, I've always found it strange Australia's biggest news providers are demanding companies like Meta and Google pay for access to their content. And I find it bizarre the Australian government is willing to capitulate. Google and Meta are not posting entire articles, they are simply linking back to the original source. In fact, Australian news websites rely on the traffic generated through Facebook, etc., to boost their numbers. I can tell you for a fact, some websites in this country would lose significant audience without social media referrals. So in that case, why should big tech have to pay for the privilege of sending consumers to an external website? The answer, because the Australian government keeps trying to prop up a dying industry. And I don't like saying that because I love television. I love what we supply here. But an industry that refuses to evolve and simply relies on sugar fixes to retain as much of the audience that's left, that's a problem. And it's a whole other story. Remember a few years ago when those big tech companies were pushed into doing content deals with News Corp, 9, 7, 10, etc.? They made millions and claimed the money would be used to reinvest in local journalism. Well, we now know that was a lie. And how do we know that? You won't believe this. One of the main players has actually revealed the truth. Speaking on the ABC's Medialand podcast, Chris Jantz, he was the former Chief Digital and Publishing Officer at Nine. Well, he's only gone and let the cat out of the bag when asked about the previous payments from Meta and Google.
Media policy in this country has, for many years, really entrenched incumbency and concentration. You go back to the media ownership law changes that allowed the Nine Fairfax merger, through to the News Media Bargaining Code that really benefited, the majority of which benefited the shareholders of three large companies.
This was because the Google and Facebook were encouraged to do deals with effectively the big end of town.
Yeah, and the bulk of the cash flowed to the big end of town. I was running one of those at the time. It was fantastic at the time. The reality is, though, the money flowed to shareholders or flowed to retire debt.
Because it wasn't guaranteed to be spent on the journalism. It was just used to increase the profit.
And very little flowed to new entrants.
And this is why the News Media Bargaining Code is complete BS. When Meta decided to remove all news content from Facebook, small sites like TV Black Box, which I co-own, were caught up in the fight and our content was removed from the platform. Despite that, when it came time for financial handouts, did we receive anything? No, we didn't receive a cent. And now we know what those big companies were doing with the money. And we have to ask, did they deserve it? In my opinion, the answer is a resounding no. If these news organisations were serious about not liking their content being used on social media platforms such as Facebook, it's easy. They should stop posting their stories there. But if they did that, their monthly numbers would drop dramatically. So they won't be doing that anytime soon.